First, here at 11, new information about Hurricane Helene, now the fourth deadliest storm to hit the mainland United States. More than 200 people have died. Hundreds more are still missing tonight. These scenes right here on your screen taken from above, showing the damage left in Asheville, North Carolina, the biggest city in the mountains of western North Carolina. In that town, electricity is now coming back slowly and resources are getting distributed with greater reach. According to the latest update, 72 people were killed in that county around Asheville alone. Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina is now closed until the 15th. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the Night Team. I'm Doug Proffitt, and through it all, one Asheville artist who lost her business to the flooding decided to get right here to Louisville for her first step at rebuilding. She's filling her reserve spot at the 68th St. James Court Art Show. WHAS11 Night Team's Clarice Shaley and photojournalist Elijah McKenzie were with her as she was setting up her booth for tomorrow's opening day, and they are live right now in Old Louisville. Clarice, this has to be one big moment for her.
Yeah, Doug, when the art show opens up tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., Maria Andrade Troya will open up her tent to thousands of smiling faces. Her tent's right here on South 3rd Street. It's booth number 702. This is all after the devastations she's witnessed in her Asheville community. Hundreds of artists set up for the St. James Court Art Show.
All right.
One of those artists is Maria Andrade Troya.
So usually you gotta pack the lids really carefully. The best way is to make sure that the knob is inside and you tape it so it doesn't slip out and break. It doesn't feel really heavy with water.
Preparing her booth number 702 on South 3rd Street, setting up handcrafted pieces salvaged before Hurricane Helene hit her studio in Asheville, North Carolina.
Well, guys, here's the update. Our window held.
Floor would seep a little bit, so we were used to that, but this was way beyond that.
Somehow she was able to leave that behind for the 3-day show in Louisville.
Once we figured out we could get gas and then the roads were open, I just thought, I'm not gonna have any income for the next 3 months.
Water rose to the 2nd floor of her building in Asheville. Troya ended up losing glazes she'd made and her kiln.
For us, October through December are our busiest seasons. The season, fall leaf peeping season for Western North Carolina is huge. So we lost the whole month.
Troya lost her studio, but her heart goes out to the communities in Western North Carolina. She's landed at St. James, though, with some of the best weather in recent history and potential record crowds. Well, one of Troya's studio mates also traveled to the art fair from Asheville. She is right up the road from Troya on booth 110 on South 3rd Street, and there has been a GoFundMe started to help out her and her studio mates. That is being posted online. Live in Louisville, Clarice Shaley, WHAS 11 Night Team on your side. Doug?
All right, what a great story. Thank you, Clarice. She's going to get a big Louisville welcome tomorrow by the thousands. We'll also hear new tonight. Tennessee officials are investigating after employees at a plastics factory were swept away by the flood waters that went through Tennessee. 11 employees were swept away by the floodwaters here, and their colleagues believe those employees were told they were not allowed to leave. According to a report, Impact Plastics failed to promptly send workers home as the water rose fast in the low-lying industrial park there in Irwin, Tennessee. That's right on the border with North Carolina. Jacob Ingram was among those who survived after the plant began flooding. By the time he says they were told to leave by the company, it was too late.
I think that they should have to pay for what they did. I think that someone needs to be held accountable for the lives lost, because there's no price you can put on a life. There isn't.
Ingram says many sought refuge on a semi-truck for nearly 2 hours until it flipped, sending them all right into the rushing waters. He was one of 5 employees in the semi who survived, and they were rescued by the National Guard. All new on the WHAS 11 Night Team, your voice, your vote. Tonight, several local Republicans running for office in November came together at the Jefferson Memorial Forest here in the Fairdale area. It all comes as future elections for Louisville mayor and Metro Council will be nonpartisan. That'll mean that there will be no R or a D by their names when you vote. WHAS 11 Night Team's Alexandra Goldberg and photojournalist Aspen Hester have the reaction.
Under the canopy of the Jefferson Memorial Forest, Louisville's Republican Party gathered one last time before Election Day.
The only way things get done are closer to the 50-yard line.
In the news this week, top headlines from Louisville's Democratic Mayor Craig Greenberg. Car crushing for convicted street racers. And a mask ban, bringing back old 1983 legislation in hopes to deter crime. A slate of Republican Metro Council candidates react. State Representative Kevin Bratcher nods his head to car crushing.
Right now, I am for crushing the cars, but just like the other things, I'm ready to listen to the debate.
Crystal Bast, candidate for Metro Council District 14, and Marilyn Parker, Metro Councilwoman in District 18, on the mask mandate.
First step is using the laws and organizations that we already have in place and actually following through with those.
Yes, I do support it. Now, I think there will be exemptions for people with health issues.
Despite seeing eye to eye on these topics, at least so far, Louisville's Republicans say they'll field a candidate for mayor in 2026 to face off with Greenberg seeking re-election.
Look, we're going to work hard to ensure that there are some good conservative alternatives to the current administration.
But for the first time, that election will also be a nonpartisan race, a major difference for Louisville voters.
Unfortunately, that was a decision that was made by Republican legislators in Frankfort without the support of many of the legislators that actually live in Louisville.
Louisville Democratic Party Chair Logan Gaddy noted the new change itself was partisan, supported primarily by Republicans in the state house. For now, both parties are focused on flipping seats next month. In Fairdale, Alexandra Goldberg, WHAS11 Night Team, on your side.
In Indiana, the race for governor is closer than you might think. Indiana governors have been Republicans for the last 20 years in the Hoosier State, but those from both sides of the aisle say this race will be closer than ever. Current Indiana Senator and businessman Republican Mike Braun is facing educator and former Republican superintendent turned Democrat Jennifer McCormick. McCormick is gaining serious traction in southern Indiana thanks to her well-known running mate, Terry Gooden. Gooden is a southern Indiana native, former state representative, and former superintendent. He tells us he's confident their campaign is appealing to voters from both parties.
We've had a lot of moderate Republicans come to us and say, hey, listen, I can't put a sign in my yard because my uncle will break my dinner plate, right? But we're going to vote for you. And there's silent majority out there.
The Gooden name's one of the best-known names in southern Indiana. Meantime, we did try multiple avenues to reach out to Braun and his running mate, but did not get a response. Instead, we talked to longtime mayor of Jeffersonville Republican Mike Moore for perspective. He agreed the race was going to be much closer than expected.
I think we've got two very good choices. I really like Braun's conversation on the economy and getting a hold of inflation, but I love the motivation behind Jennifer McCormick talking about public schools.
And it's a race we here at WHS 11 News will be following closely. Again, no Democrat has held the governor's seat in Indiana since Joe Kernan, who was voted out of office in 2005. And now to the race for the White House. As you know, it's going to be the big one on our ballot this November. Former President Donald Trump and the Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democrat, both hitting the campaign trail today. Harris was joined by former Republican Representative Liz Cheney in Wisconsin today. Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney. The two held an event right here in Ripon, Wisconsin, which is known as the birthplace of the Republican Party. Cheney once again calling a second Trump term a danger to democracy and pushing those opposed to a second Trump term to vote for Harris.
I know that she loves our country, and I know that she will be a president for all Americans. As a conservative, as a patriot, as a mother, as someone who reveres our Constitution, I am honored to join her in this urgent cause.
Donald Trump today campaigning in Michigan for the former president, claiming the White House has nearly no money to deal with Hurricane Helene. Trump calling Biden and Harris' response to the disaster slow and poor.
This is the worst response in the history of hurricanes. A certain president, I will not name him, destroyed his reputation with Katrina, and this is doing even worse.
All this comes as former First Lady Melania Trump broke away from her husband's stance on abortion. Her announcement previews an upcoming memoir. In a video released today, she advocated for women's reproductive rights, calling it an essential right and saying there is no room for compromise. Melania Trump's views are in stark opposition with the former president, who has repeatedly bragged about handpicking 3 of the U.S. Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe. As Election Day gets closer, take a look at your screen. We are marking some key dates that you can put on your calendar. This coming Monday, October 7th, is the deadline to register to vote in both Kentucky and Indiana. That's for you to register. Early voting in Indiana will begin October 8th next week. In Kentucky, it's October 31st through November 2nd for the early voting. Don't forget, Election Day, of course, is Tuesday, November 5th. New tonight, Black Lives Matter Louisville and the Louisville Community Bail Fund have come out against the reinforcement of a decades-old mask ban that's been on the books since 1983. In a lengthy statement, the organizations say people have the right and responsibility to protect their own health and that of their loved ones. They say the mayor's call for a ban on the masks is irresponsible as we enter peak periods for respiratory illnesses. The organizations go on to express their concern over biased policing when it comes to enforcement of the mask ban. Metro Police have already made an arrest in response to a 911 call related to the mask ban. In an arrest citation, police say yesterday they were called to Oak Street and Dixie Highway on reports of a man wearing a mask and carrying a large gun. According to this arrest citation, this man, Frank Childress, was wearing a black full-faced mask when police made a, quote, reasonable, suspicious stop. Police say officers asked to search Childress to see if he had a weapon on him, and he originally said yes. The report goes on to say when officers began the pat down, Childress allegedly pulled away and ran from officers. When police finally caught up with him, he allegedly resisted police, causing damage to a police cruiser and some officers' personal belongings. Childress is now facing several charges, including fleeing, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, possession of marijuana, and menacing. Authorities say Childress did have a gun on him. More local news here on the WHAS11 night team. A man facing dozens of criminal charges after a crash with a school bus in Nelson County was back in front of a judge today. Ricardo Gray is accused of stealing a vehicle, then leading police on a chase that ended with him crashing into the bus. Luckily, nobody was hurt. Now, parents have been watching this case closely after it was announced Gray had accepted a plea deal that would limit the amount of jail time that he served. The Commonwealth Attorney made a plea deal with Gray of a 1-year jail sentence and 5 years of probation. However, that deal is now in jeopardy thanks to new legislation. It's the Safer Kentucky Act. It includes revisions to carjacking within the state. The judge is now asking attorneys to see if this new law applies to Gray's case, since the alleged crime was committed before the act was implemented.
The law also says that fleeing of any police charges are not to be probated. So what the attorneys are arguing over is whether or not that can be applied to Mr. Gray or not.
The judge continued the case to a later date to allow attorneys to talk about the situation. The decision on the plea deal is now set for November 13th. And new court documents are asking a judge to hold the former Clark County, Indiana Sheriff Jamie Knoll and his wife Misty in contempt of court. The state is suing the two in an attempt to get back the money it says was illegally spent. According to the court documents, the Knolls violated court orders when they failed to make payments on their house in Florida. The court has granted the state an injunction that freezes the Knolls' accounts and forbids them from selling or doing anything that could harm their properties. But that injunction did give the Knolls access to money to pay their bills and maintain those payments on the properties. The documents say the Knolls are 4 to 5 months behind on their mortgage at the house in Florida, which is causing the value of the home now to go down. The Knolls are scheduled to be back in court for a hearing on their civil trials coming up November 13th.